Come on.
Warning, copyright violation. Remain calm as authorities
Here's an
arrive.
idea.
Copyright
Everything would be better
violation.
open source.
Remain calm as authorities arrive. Copyright violation. Remain calm as authorities arrive. Here's an idea. Copyright violation.
Being a maker, constructing things from scratch, turning what one has into what one doesn't, fearlessly voiding warranties, is an activity beyond being simply crafty or handy, and it appears to have some staying power. In 2011, Make magazine founder Dale Dougherty said, "We are all makers." This year, Brie Pettis, the co-founder of MakerBot, said the same, and no shortage of orgs and peeps echoed the sentiment. What does that mean, though? We are all makers. Well, Dougherty sort of Americlaims making, talking about how America and its economy was built by makers, people disinterested in the status quo who sought to fashion something new and unexpected out of available materials. Both Dougherty and Pettis talk about how there is presently more knowledge and capability for creating things than ever before. Makers seize upon a spirit of openness and availability and innovation to create new things, maybe for money, but probably just because they love to and can, and they share their discoveries with their community. If you mix the internet with 3D printing, CNC milling, laser cutting, and microcontroller programming, and you add a dash of emphasis on creativity and entrepreneurship, you end up with our situation, one that apparently can't not produce makers. Or I guess make makers. But like Dougherty says, this practice isn't really new. Pettis talks about how our maker movement has its roots in a post-World War II home workshop culture. Yet here we are celebrating the nascent maker movement. If making is old hat, how is a making resurgence possible? What happened? Well, a million things. The Industrial Revolution, followed by the Digital Revolution, the increase in specialized knowledge required to make, the relatively low availability of that knowledge, the growth of global markets, labor, manufacturing, and shipping, an emphasis on convenience and consumerism, but we are gonna focus on only a couple of these things, namely specialized knowledge and its availability. And to do that, we're gonna talk for a minute about, yes, tractors.
She thinks my tractor's sexy.
So first, some groundwork, pun intended. 1, tractors are important to farming, a dadoy. 2, tractors are expensive, also a dadoy. This means that when your tractor breaks, you're going to want to repair it instead of buying a new one. In this way, tractors are unlike microwaves or 90% of things. More on that later. And 3, time is money. So it would make sense that farm staff would fix their own tractors. It's quicker than taking your tractor to the tractor guy or waiting for the tractor guy to come to your tractor. This is a pretty standard trope for the semi-modern practice of working the land. There is a person or persons who possess the necessary mechanical skill to keep a tractor running. Overalls are involved, probably a clutch of wrenches, some clanking, swearing, a grease stain, and then aha! She is back up and running again. However, as it turns out, this is becoming less and less possible. The modernization of tractors, like the modernization of 90% of things, has involved computer chips and sensors, processors, and data ports. Your normal run-of-the-mill farmer, as it turns out, can't fix those things. Now, I know we don't normally think of farmers as a technologically savvy group, but let's give them some credit. The problem isn't necessarily that farmers don't know how to fix high-tech gizmos. It's that they aren't allowed to. Because if they did, they could wind up breaking copyright law and getting slapped with a fine, or worse, tending to the pastures at the big house. The hard and software in modern tractors, like that in many modern cars, Blu-ray technology, and even here on YouTube, is, as of filming, protected by the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, or DMCA. Leet-haxing the firewall protecting the mainframe of your trusty tractor is punishable by law, and so a licensed repair technician must leet-hax it for you. That is slow, and it's expensive. It's bad for business. The tractor, which at one point was kept functional by ingenuity, know-how, and probably more than a little luck or persistence, has become a black box housing more black boxes. Are there benefits to tractor modernization? Sure, I would guess otherwise. Today's high-tech tractors are the cyborg bee's knees, but written nowhere is a law which states technological advancement must come at the price of user access. This, I think, is the basis for a feeling that there is a resurgence in making. making. We'll look back on the late 1950s through the early 2000s as a significant period of transition, one resulting in more technological capability and greater degrees of complexity, one where at first the presence of that technological capability outpaced a widely held intimate understanding of the technology itself. But as tech and increasingly code literacy become skills recognized as necessary to interact with the everyday world, that complexity could become mitigated. And where licenses and restrictions placed on our technology make that literacy useless, we may feel increasingly justified in some righteous reverse engineering. I see the maker movement as the reappearance of a population willing and maybe even able to fix a tractor, or build their own from scratch. Except tractors are no longer just tractors. They're a particularly modern, complicated amalgam of mechanical, technological, and manufacturing know-how, bound up in some highly restrictive ideas about intellectual property. Making, I think, is at the crossroads of curiosity, craftiness, and more than a little impatience. It's a response to a world that feels mass-produced, where relatively few things are personal, open, or available. And in this way, I think we can also view making as very related to hacking, a frustration with unavailability paired with a desire to create.
Shut up and get in the car.
Which brings us to the larger question suggested by this modern maker movement. Is our technology too locked down? Would it be better, faster, more interesting? I don't know, create more jobs if that wasn't the case? Should everything be open source? Open source is a licensing and development model mostly associated with software. Open source software has its source, its inner workings, open to the public. Open source software may even allow people to base new software on that code and then distribute the results. Well-known open source software includes Bitcoin, Apache, WordPress, Mozilla, and BitTorrent. The first MakerBot replicator was open source. Weirdly and unfortunately, the second one isn't. Which is to say, many things, not just software, have what could be considered a source to be opened. One might open source the design and construction of machines and robots, cars, or buildings, even sculptures or pieces of music. Poetry and philosophy might be tough to open source, but heck, we can try. Really, there's a point at which open source is merely design and construction intersecting with transparency, and that, I think, is what so many of us are interested in seeing more of in the world. Now, before we get too much further, I hear fingers on keys, writing comments questioning economic sustainability, and I'm glad you're asking. Open source is not synonymous with free. One can, and people do, charge money for that which has been open sourced. There's also the sometimes confusing distinction between open source and free software. Free software is not monetarily free, but rather is open source and requires no permission at all to do with whatever you like. Something open source but not free might have certain restrictions on use or distribution. In the interest of time, we are not going to dwell on this and just say, for simplicity's sake, available knowledge, freely licensed or not, would be a great start. This, I think, is the hallmark of the maker movement, using technology and the internet to collect and spread knowledge and capability that increases the transparency of mechanical, technological, and manufactured goods. The maker movement has, to me, always felt like the investigative reporting for the interior of objects. And out of that investigation comes all of the power and agency we associate with knowledge or ability. Imagine a world, I think the maker movement suggests, where we don't have to fight to gain that knowledge, where our technology can admit that, as Kevin Slavin said in a recent video for the MIT Media Lab, it should be as varied and unique as each of its users.
Why wouldn't you make space for 4 SIM cards to use as many carriers as you want to?
What if we were able to easily make it that way, as is the case in places like Shenzhen, China? Imagine a world where our technology and machinery are restricted out of the box, maybe, but with a little ingenuity and some YouTube tutorials, infinitely customizable because each and every inch of their inner workings, their source, is open and available. And if you access it, there's no threat that the feds are gonna just bust through your skylight. We're sorta on our way there. After some turmoil, it's officially legal to jailbreak your mobile phone. Congress is voting on the tractor issue in a couple months, but on the whole, our technological landscape is fenced in by markets and ideas about intellectual property that widely encourage and support restriction. And on that landscape, behind that fence, a tractor. that's not running because no one is allowed to fix it. What do you guys think? Should everything be open source? And is that in some way related to the maker movement? Let us know in the comments and I will respond to some of them in next week's comment response video. In this week's comment response video, we talk about your thoughts regarding Rick, Morty, and Paul Feyerabend's idea of an anarchic scientific method. If you want to check that out, you can click right here or find a link in the doobly-doo. And I know we just came back, but we are going to be taking another week off, so the next time that you see my face on your YouTube On Idea channel will be not next Wednesday, but the Wednesday after that. We are going to be doing an episode about trigger warnings in classrooms. So consider this your, I guess, trigger warning for a discussion around trigger warnings. This week's episode was brought to you by the hard work of these tractor hackers. We have a Facebook, an IRC, and a subreddit, links in the doobly-doo. And the tweets of the week, which came one right after the other, are from Sublime Bombast, who points us towards an AV Club piece about the kind of hidden heart of Rick and Morty, and also one from Questioner, who includes a webcomic about how what we normally call mad scientists are actually usually mad engineers.